The clink of champagne glasses in a hospital corridor is not a sound you hear every day. Yet there she stood, Evelyn Pierce, the impeccably dressed mistress, smiling in triumph as she popped open a bottle to celebrate a married millionaire's decision to leave his pregnant wife. Doctors, nurses, and onlookers gaped in shock. No one expected such a brazen display in the sterile white halls reserved for healing. In the middle of it all lay Lucy Donovan, fighting panic and heartbreak while clutching her unborn child. How did it come to this? What dark secrets could drive a man to abandon everything he once held dear? Lucy Donovan remembered the day she met Carter Donovan, like it was a brilliant, sun-soaked dream. She had just started her new job as a junior interior designer at an upscale architecture firm in Manhattan. In walks a client whose larger-than-life Carter, the real estate millionaire known for snapping up heritage buildings and converting them into luxurious properties. With his impeccable suit, magnetic gaze, and commanding presence, Carter could charm an entire room by merely raising an eyebrow. Lucy was sent by her boss, Elizabeth Harding, to gather Carter's preferences for a new townhouse renovation in the Upper East Side. She'd expected a typical wealthy client, aloof and demanding, but instead found someone seemingly warm and curious. Over coffee, served in delicate porcelain cups, Lucy began sketching ideas, only half aware of the conversation, as she found herself fascinated by Carter's unwavering stare. He studied her with an intensity that felt both exhilarating and unnerving. After the meeting, Carter asked Lucy to show him different wallpaper samples and walk him through the final picks. It wasn't uncommon for clients to request in-person consultations, but something about the way Carter insisted on Lucy's involvement felt personal. Perhaps it was mere professional courtesy. Perhaps it was more. No matter the reason, Lucy, then a relatively shy woman in her mid-20s, felt her heart flutter with a strange sense of possibility. Within weeks, coffee break consultations became dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, sometimes under the guise of design brainstorming, sometimes disguised as friendly check-ins. Lucy noticed how Carter listened intently to her thoughts on color palettes, but also asked questions about her personal life, her background, her family, her dreams for the future. Their relationship tiptoed around professional boundaries until one evening at a rooftop bar, with the city lights twinkling below, Carter finally made his intentions clear. "I don't want to talk about wallpaper anymore," he had said, tilting her chin gently to meet his gaze. "I want to talk about you, Lucy Donovan." Their romance escalated rapidly, swirling with the kind of breathless excitement Lucy had only read about in novels. Carter spared no expense in courting her. Weekend getaways to the Hamptons, black-tie charity galas, diamond earrings wrapped in delicate boxes. Lucy was dazzled. But beyond the gifts, Carter seemed to genuinely cherish her company. He shared stories from his youth growing up in a small town before he made his first fortune. He described nights in a run-down apartment with leaking pipes back when he was just dreaming of building a real estate empire. She was touched by his vulnerability. Despite the stark differences in their backgrounds, she from a middle-class home in Pittsburgh, him a newly minted millionaire from upstate New York. Their relationship seemed built on mutual respect. Lucy's parents, Margaret and Daniel Jacobs, were initially skeptical of this high-flying businessman courting their daughter. But Carter charmed them over a simple dinner, helping Margaret wash dishes afterward, and listening intently to Daniel's stories about his decades working in a steel mill. It wasn't long before they gave their blessing with cautious optimism. After just a year of dating, Carter proposed to Lucy at an extravagant party in front of his wealthy circle. There, with 100 people watching, he knelt on one knee and offered Lucy a ring the size of a small pebble. Lucy, overwhelmed and overjoyed, said yes. The entire room erupted in cheers, but no one was more ecstatic than Carter's longtime friend and personal assistant Thomas Murdoch, who whispered in Lucy's ear as he hugged her. "He's waited for someone like you for a long time." The wedding was a fairy tale. Lucy's lace gown, the cathedral ceremony, with towering flower arrangements, and the lavish reception at a historic mansion in Westchester. It all felt surreal. As they danced to a slow jazz tune, Carter leaned in, pressing his lips against Lucy's ear. "You've changed my life," he whispered. "I've never been happier than I am in this moment." The first sign of something amiss arrived with subtlety. Lucy heard a rumor among Carter's staff that he was still meeting with ex-flames for business dinners. She tried to dismiss it. Carter was a charismatic networker, always forging new connections. Yet the rumor wouldn't entirely leave her mind. A few months after their wedding, Lucy noticed changes in Carter's demeanor. He became more guarded, occasionally defensive when she asked about his day. Late-night phone calls in hushed tones. Text messages hidden swiftly as she walked into the room. She didn't want to pry. She wanted to trust the man she had married, the man who had vowed to love her. During one tense evening, Lucy finally mustered the courage to ask, "Is there something you're not telling me, Carter?" He set down the glass of bourbon he'd been nursing and let out an exasperated sigh. "Lucy." "There's nothing," he assured her, a slight edge to his voice. "I'm under a lot of stress with the new developments. Investors are breathing down my neck." His explanation sounded plausible. Being a real estate mogul meant dealing with high-stakes projects, moody investors, and persistent media. Lucy tried to quell her rising doubts, reminding herself that marriage required trust, especially in times of pressure. As time slipped on, Lucy discovered she was pregnant. It was both a shock and a delight. She had always wanted a family, although she wasn't certain Carter felt the same urgency. Nervous to share the news, she prepared a small gift box with a tiny pair of baby shoes inside, and left it for him on the kitchen island one morning. Carter arrived home late that night, a shadow of fatigue darkening his face. When he found the gift, Lucy stood quietly in the living room watching. He opened the box and stared for what felt like an eternity. "Is this?" he stammered. Lucy nodded, tears in her eyes. For a moment, an electric thrill shot through her. She anticipated joyous celebration, a warm hug, or at least a beaming smile. Instead, Carter's expression grew conflicted. He tried to mask it, forcing a grin. "This is news," he said, lifting her off her feet in a reluctant twirl. But Lucy could sense the tension radiating from him like a silent alarm. The next few days were a roller coaster. At times, Carter appeared excited, showing up with pregnancy books or stopping by the baby department to browse adorable outfits. At other times, he withdrew, immersed in phone calls with work associates or leaving the apartment abruptly for suspicious meetings. Lucy chalked it up to a man grappling with sudden fatherhood. She was determined to keep the mood light, focusing on her own well-being and the blossoming life within her. Lucy's suspicions found a focal point when Evelyn Pierce appeared, a striking woman with an elegant figure. Honey blonde hair and a voice dripping with confidence, Evelyn was introduced to Lucy as a consultant Carter had hired to handle a new multi-million-dollar property acquisition. From the moment Lucy met her at a corporate dinner, she felt the hair rise on the back of her neck. Evelyn didn't just exude sophistication. She possessed a presence that turned heads everywhere she went. Men lined up to meet her, and women eyed her with guarded curiosity. During that dinner, Lucy watched closely as Evelyn slid into the seat beside Carter, lightly touching his arm while they spoke. The banter between them was charged, full of inside jokes that Lucy had never heard. Carter seemed enthralled, leaning in whenever Evelyn spoke, at times ignoring Lucy's remarks entirely. After the dinner, Lucy confronted Carter in their car. "That Evelyn, she seems very familiar with you. How long have you worked together?" He shrugged, avoiding her eyes. "Just a few months. She's great at what she does. We needed her expertise for this new development. It's purely professional, Lucy." Lucy's heart hammered in her chest. "Are you sure there's nothing else?" "Because the way she was acting, Lucy," he interrupted tersely. "I told you we're colleagues. If you can't handle me having a female consultant, then maybe we need to talk about your insecurities." His response stung. Lucy blinked back tears, silently staring out the window as the city lights streaked by in smudges of yellow and white. She had always trusted Carter, but Evelyn's presence was like a bright red warning sign flashing in the darkness. In the weeks that followed, Lucy heard more whispers. Staff at the Donovan mansion, particularly the longtime housekeeper, Rosa Hernandez, and the private chauffeur Vincent Page, were murmuring about Carter's after-work rendezvous. Lucy tried to stay calm, focusing on her pregnancy. She was determined not to let stress harm her unborn child. One evening, Lucy decided to look through Carter's study. She told herself she was only searching for receipts or documents relevant to their baby expenses, but deep down she knew she was prying. In a seldom-opened drawer, Lucy found a folded invoice from an upscale champagne bar, dated just a week prior, for 2 bottles of their most expensive bubbly. The total cost was astronomical, certainly not an amount Carter would have spent alone. Next to it lay a receipt for a floral bouquet from a boutique known for extravagant romantic arrangements. The card read, "To Evelyn, the key to my next adventure." Lucy's heart pounded so violently, it felt like it might burst. Evidence in hand, she waited for Carter to return. Her mind whirled with possible explanations. Could it be a corporate gift? Could it be a misunderstanding? She didn't want to jump to conclusions, but every fiber of her being told her the truth was painful, but clear. When Carter finally stepped through the door that night, well past midnight, smelling faintly of whiskey, Lucy confronted him. She displayed the invoice and the receipt, her hands trembling. "Who is Evelyn to you? And don't lie," she demanded, her voice quivering but laced with conviction. Carter's eyes flickered with shock, then flashed with anger. "Why are you snooping through my things?" he shot back. "That's private business, Lucy. You have no right." Lucy inhaled sharply, tears brimming. "No right. I'm your wife, Carter. I'm carrying your child. Don't I deserve the truth?" There was a long, suffocating silence. Finally, Carter ran a hand through his hair, looking away. "We're having problems." He paused, swallowing hard. "I'm having doubts about us." A tear slipped down Lucy's cheek. "What are you saying?" He struggled to find words. "Evelyn. She's exciting, Lucy. I'm sorry. I didn't plan this, but it just happened." Lucy felt as though the floor had vanished beneath her feet. Though deeply wounded, Lucy wasn't ready to give up her marriage. She convinced Carter to attend a few counseling sessions with a marriage therapist, Dr. Rebecca Patterson, who specialized in high-profile couples. In her comfortable book-lined office, Lucy poured out her feelings of betrayal, while Carter insisted he was under immense pressure and accidentally fell into an emotional connection with Evelyn. "I never wanted to hurt Lucy," Carter said, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles turned white. "But this new relationship, I don't know. It feels real. I can't just pretend it didn't happen." Lucy's tears came in waves, unstoppable. She pleaded with Carter to end things with Evelyn, especially since she was pregnant with his child. "Doctor?" Patterson listened closely occasionally, interjecting with questions about Carter's deeper needs and Lucy's capacity to forgive. The sessions were draining. Lucy oscillated between rage, sadness, and faint hope that Carter might realize the gravity of his actions. However, Carter consistently expressed confusion. Despite promising to cut ties with Evelyn, Lucy noticed that he seemed distant, as though torn between two worlds. At 5 months pregnant, Lucy discovered disheartening text messages from Evelyn on Carter's phone describing romantic nights and future plans. Lucy confronted Carter again, demanding he make a choice. Carter averted his gaze. "I need time," he said. Her voice rose with exasperation. "Time for what? Are you actually in love with her?" His silence was answer enough. Lucy dreaded the day she'd have to meet Evelyn again, but she never expected it to be in a hospital corridor with an open bottle of champagne. By the 7th month of her pregnancy, Lucy's stress levels had skyrocketed. One evening she experienced severe abdominal pains. Terrified for her baby, she rushed herself to St. Matthew's Hospital, where doctors immediately admitted her. Carter was notified, but as Lucy tried to call him repeatedly, he didn't pick up. Lucy's best friend, Amanda Keating, arrived in a panic, offering emotional support as Lucy was taken into the maternity ward for monitoring. It was a false alarm, but the doctors wanted her to stay overnight for observation. The following morning, Lucy was stunned to see Evelyn Pierce strutting down the sterile hallway in stilettos that clacked loudly against the linoleum. Her blonde hair was coiffed to perfection, and in her arms she carried a bottle of Dom Perignon. Nurse James Pritchard followed behind, protesting, "Ma'am, this is not a place for open alcohol." But Evelyn ignored him, wearing a triumphant grin. She stopped in front of Lucy's room as Amanda looked on with disbelief. "I just came to celebrate," Evelyn announced in a sing-song voice, turning the bottle label outwards for all to see. "After all, Carter has made his decision. He's leaving you, Lucy. And I wanted to toast that freedom." Lucy felt her stomach lurch. Amanda erupted in anger. "How dare you show up here with a bottle of champagne?" "Lucy is pregnant. You have no business." Evelyn cut her off, smirking. "I have every business here. Carter wants me by his side. I was going to wait until Lucy checked out, but I thought why not come now and share the good news." The hum of hospital machinery and the murmur of nurses passing by formed a surreal backdrop to this confrontation. Lucy, confined to her bed, could only stare in utter shock and heartbreak. Evelyn's audacity was unimaginable. Meanwhile, Nurse James Pritchard rushed off to call security. "Evelyn, get out!" Lucy choked, tears threatening to spill. She could barely speak without her voice cracking. Or what Evelyn taunted. "You'll have me thrown out?" "Go ahead. But you can't deny that Carter's chosen me." She produced an envelope from her designer handbag. "He's filed for separation. You'll get the documents soon enough." Lucy's world spun. She pressed a hand to her abdomen, feeling her baby's gentle kick as if the child sensed the turmoil. Amanda reached over, gripping Lucy's other hand in silent solidarity. Security arrived moments later, guiding Evelyn out. But not before she left the bottle of champagne on a nearby table, popping it open with an echoing pop that made Lucy's heart leap. That evening, Carter finally showed up at the hospital, his face etched with conflict. Lucy, weak and furious, could barely look at him. "Did you really send Evelyn here?" she demanded. His eyes darted to the door as though searching for an escape route. "I didn't know she'd do that," he stammered. "I told her I was going to, well, that I needed space to figure things out." Lucy's eyes burned with rage. "Figure things out." Her voice trembled. "She brought champagne to celebrate. You leaving me your pregnant wife. If that doesn't confirm your choice, I don't know what does." Carter sank into a chair by her bed, his usually confident posture now deflated. "Lucy, everything has spun out of control. The truth is, I'm dealing with more than just relationship confusion. Evelyn's father, Charles Pierce, is one of my biggest investors. If I walk away from this, from her, my entire business empire could collapse. I've been trying to salvage everything, but now it's gotten too complicated." Lucy pressed her lips together, tears threatening to spill again. "So you're trading our marriage and our baby for money?" He closed his eyes. "I never wanted it to be like this. Evelyn wasn't supposed to be anything but a consultant. Then her father started investing heavily, and we got closer. It went too far." Exhausted Lucy slumped back onto the pillows. "Why couldn't you just tell me? Why lie to me for months?" "Because I was ashamed," Carter admitted. "I'm not the man you thought I was. Lucy, I wish I could take it all back." She shut her eyes, listening to the steady beeping of the fetal heart monitor. "But you can't," she whispered. "And now you're leaving me." Carter didn't respond, which spoke volumes. Lucy turned her face away, tears sliding down her cheeks. She thought about their wedding day, the promise of a life together, and how quickly it had all unraveled. In the days that followed, Lucy was released from the hospital with strict orders to remain on bed rest. When she returned to their penthouse, she found Carter had already moved out, leaving behind a jarring emptiness. She discovered a note in the kitchen. "We need distance. I'll send for my belongings." Carter. A storm of conflicting emotions surged within her. Anger hurt, and a faint foolish hope that this separation might be temporary. Her mother, Margaret, arrived to stay with Lucy during her bed rest, providing comfort and preparing meals. Amanda also dropped by daily, sometimes bringing Lucy's favorite pastries to coax her appetite. More often, though, Lucy just felt numb. Then came the legal documents. A courier delivered a thick envelope containing Carter's petition for separation, accompanied by a proposed financial arrangement. The terms offered Lucy a generous sum in return for a swift, uncontested split. It was cold businesslike, and it tore at Lucy's already fragile heart. She contacted an attorney recommended by Amanda Hugh Randolph, a formidable family law specialist with a compassionate streak. Hugh listened as Lucy tearfully recounted the entire debacle. After carefully reviewing the prenuptial agreement she'd signed, Hugh discovered a clause that might turn the tables. It stated that if Carter initiated separation during pregnancy, Lucy would be entitled to a substantially larger portion of his estate. Carter clearly overlooked this, Hugh said, tapping the prenuptial agreement with his pen. Either that, or he assumed you wouldn't fight it. But legally, you have a strong position, Lucy. Lucy bit her lip, swirling with conflicting emotions. She never wanted to wage a legal battle with the man she once loved. But Carter's betrayal and the humiliating spectacle Evelyn had created left her with little choice. She had to protect herself and her unborn child. Meanwhile, Evelyn reveled in her newfound status. Carter moved into a luxury hotel suite, and she was a frequent visitor. She even flaunted social media posts, hinting at a blooming romance, pictures of champagne toasts, lavish dinners, and cryptic captions about new beginnings. Lucy, who avoided social media for her own mental well-being, heard about it from Amanda, who seethed with anger on Lucy's behalf. But behind the scenes, Evelyn had her own agenda. Unbeknownst to Carter, she was meeting secretly with her father, Charles Pierce, plotting how to seize control of Carter's business interests. While Carter believed that keeping Evelyn happy would stabilize his dealings with her father's investments, Charles had more ruthless plans in mind. He wanted to dominate Carter's real estate empire, and using Evelyn's hold on Carter was a convenient strategy. Evelyn saw herself not just as Carter's lover, but as a future queen of his empire, envisioning a day when Lucy would be completely out of the picture and she could reign over all Carter had built. She prodded Carter about finalizing the separation from Lucy and aggressively sought to isolate him from Lucy's family and friends. "She's draining you," Evelyn would say, feigning concern. "You need to focus on our future. Don't let your guilt drag you down." Carter, torn by guilt and financial fear, became increasingly reliant on Evelyn. In the quiet corners of his mind, though he felt uneasy, he thought of Lucy, heavily pregnant, likely crying in the penthouse they once shared. But every time he pondered returning, or at least apologizing properly, Evelyn reminded him of the precarious position with her father's investments. Slowly, Carter was cornered, trapped by the interplay of money and lust. Desperate to find some sense of justice, Lucy confided in Dr. Rebecca Patterson outside their therapy sessions. Dr. Patterson, though bound by confidentiality in counseling Carter and Lucy together, was still empathetic to Lucy's distress. She recommended Lucy seek additional support, possibly from a prenatal support group for expecting mothers. There, Lucy connected with other women, facing various pregnancy challenges. Some had stable marriages, others were single. A few had complex relationships. Although none had quite the same scandal Lucy faced, she found the camaraderie deeply comforting. In one of those sessions, Lucy met Charlotte Whitman, who happened to be a private investigator's wife. Upon hearing Lucy's struggles, albeit in a carefully vague manner, Charlotte suggested Lucy speak with her husband, Garrett Whitman. Lucy hesitated. She wasn't sure if she wanted to unearth more painful truths about Carter's affair. But curiosity and a need for closure won out. Garrett Whitman turned out to be discreet and competent. Over cups of herbal tea in Lucy's living room, he assured her that any information he gathered would remain strictly confidential. Lucy explained the situation, focusing on Carter's entanglement with Evelyn. "I don't want to drag this out in public," Lucy said, "but something about Evelyn. It feels wrong more than just an affair. I can't describe it, but my instincts tell me she's trouble." Garrett took notes and promised to investigate discreetly. "There might be financial angles you're unaware of," he said, his voice calm. "If Evelyn's father is leveraging Carter, there could be a paper trail." Lucy watched him leave, feeling a mix of trepidation and relief. She wanted answers, but she also feared what those answers might reveal. As Lucy approached her 8th month of pregnancy, she experienced another scare, this time more severe. Sharp pains and sudden dizziness led to an emergency rush back to St. Matthew's Hospital. Doctors worried about preeclampsia and admitted her for thorough testing. Margaret was with her, holding her hand, when Carter walked in hesitantly. He looked genuinely alarmed. Without a word, he approached Lucy's bedside and brushed aside a loose strand of her hair. "I heard you were in the hospital again," he said softly. "Are you okay?" Lucy's eyes brimmed with tears. "The doctor said I need to stay until they're sure my blood pressure is stable," she whispered. "I'm scared, Carter." He swallowed hard. Guilt etched across his features. "I'm sorry, Lucy." His voice trembled. "I never wanted to hurt you. I don't know what to do anymore." Margaret glared from the corner. "Maybe you should stop being manipulated by your mistress and focus on your wife, Carter," she snapped, her voice shaking with controlled anger. "That would be a start." Carter didn't respond, just stared at Lucy with a look of tormented regret. "Do you need anything?" he finally asked. Lucy blinked away tears. "I need you to decide if you're going to be in our child's life," she said plainly. "If not, then leave me in peace." He inhaled shakily, looking down at the floor. "I'll stay tonight by your side, if that's okay." Margaret left to get some rest at a nearby hotel. Carter remained dozing in a chair beside Lucy's bed. In the middle of the night, Lucy woke up to find him pacing by the window phone pressed to his ear. She overheard him whispering to Evelyn, reassuring her that he'd be back tomorrow and that he was only here because it's an emergency. Lucy felt a pang of agony. Even in this dire moment, she was second to Evelyn. The next day, Garrett Whitman called Lucy with news. "I've discovered something interesting about Evelyn Pierce," he said. "Her father is indeed a major investor in Carter's developments, but there's more. Evelyn herself has a history of targeting wealthy men. She even changed her name 3 years ago after a high-profile lawsuit in California." Lucy's grip on the phone tightened. What sort of lawsuit, fraud, extortion, that kind of thing? The case was settled out of court, and the documents were sealed. But from what I can piece together, she orchestrated a scheme to blackmail a prominent entrepreneur she'd been dating. Lucy felt a rush of disgust and fear. So she's done this before? Likely, Garrett confirmed. I also found that she's been funneling money into a series of shell companies. It appears she's preparing for a major financial move, possibly once Carter's business merges with her father's investments. Lucy's mind spun. She had to warn Carter even if he had wronged her. Part of her still cared enough to see him not get ruined by a predatory affair. The next morning from her hospital bed, she contacted Carter. "Can you come by?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. He arrived in the afternoon, wearing a crisp suit and a strained expression. "I can't stay long," he said, as though speaking to a casual acquaintance instead of his pregnant wife. Lucy gestured for him to sit. Then she shared the information from Garrett. She explained Evelyn's murky past, the sealed lawsuit, the shell companies. Carter's face hardened with disbelief. "That's impossible," he insisted. "Evelyn might be complicated, but she wouldn't do that to me. Her father is my biggest partner." "Don't be naive, Carter," Lucy implored, voice trembling with urgency. "I'm telling you this so you can protect yourself. She's planning something, and you're right in the middle of it." He stood abruptly, anger flaring. "How dare you investigate my personal life? You're—" His voice cracked, and he paused, struggling to find the right words. "You're just bitter, Lucy. Because I chose her." A wave of hurt washed over Lucy. She closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. "I don't want you to fall victim to a con artist. I loved you once. I still care about our child's father." Her tone softened. "Just be careful, Carter. He stormed out without another word. Over the next few days, Lucy recovered enough to be discharged from the hospital, but with strict orders to rest. She returned to the penthouse where every room echoed with memories of her crumbling marriage. Margaret urged her to move back home with her, but Lucy refused. She wanted to stand her ground at least for the sake of her unborn baby, who would soon enter this world. Meanwhile, Carter's life spiraled. He confronted Evelyn about her past. At first, she feigned shock and hurt, claiming Lucy's investigation was slander. However, as Carter dug deeper, the holes in Evelyn's story became impossible to ignore. Eventually, she admitted she'd had a few legal misunderstandings in California, but insisted she was the victim of a vicious ex. Carter tried to walk away, but Evelyn reminded him of her father's crucial investment in Carter's current multi-million-dollar project. If Carter humiliated her or cut her off, Charles Pierce would retaliate financially. Carter faced losing everything he'd built. Still, the seeds of doubt had been planted. Late at night, in the privacy of the hotel suite they temporarily shared, Carter noticed Evelyn sending cryptic messages, engaging in phone calls she quickly ended whenever he approached. He realized with mounting dread that Lucy's warning might be valid. One evening, Carter stood on the hotel balcony, looking out over the city skyline. He remembered the early days with Lucy, how pure it felt to build something meaningful, how they'd laughed over shared jokes and watched sunsets. The guilt gnawed at him. Was it too late to make amends? But every time he considered severing ties with Evelyn, the spectre of Charles Pierce's retribution loomed. Carter had borrowed heavily against future investments. If Charles pulled out, Carter could be left penniless, forced to declare bankruptcy, losing not only his fortune, but his reputation. Trapped in his own greed, Carter sank deeper into despair. Garrett Whitman's investigations bore more fruit. He discovered that Evelyn and Charles were planning to oust Carter from his own company once the final contracts were signed. They had set up a scenario where Carter would be legally obligated to hand over controlling shares if certain financial thresholds weren't met. Garrett relayed this to Lucy in a hushed phone call. Lucy's heart pounded. "We have to warn Carter," she said, wincing at the irony trying to save a husband who had betrayed her. That night, Lucy did something drastic. Despite her doctor's orders for bed rest, she insisted Amanda drive her to Carter's hotel. The journey was tense. Lucy's heart was pounding, and every bump in the road felt like it might trigger contractions. When they arrived, Lucy hobbled through the grand lobby, ignoring the concerned stares of staff. She took the elevator to the penthouse suite. Amanda stayed close, ready to call for help if Lucy's condition worsened. At the suite's door, Lucy pounded until Carter answered. He looked genuinely shocked to see her. "Lucy, why are you here?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder. Evelyn's voice drifted from inside Carter. "Who's at the door?" without waiting for an invitation. Lucy pushed past him. Inside, she found Evelyn seated on a plush couch, sipping champagne. Evelyn's smirk vanished the moment she saw Lucy's determined expression. "You need to listen," Lucy said, gripping the back of a chair for support. "Garrett has proof that you're about to be ruined both personally and financially. Evelyn and her father have set you up." Evelyn laughed, but it sounded brittle. "Oh, please, Lucy. You're desperate. We all know you've lost Carter's love, so now you want to ruin our relationship with false accusations." Carter's eyes flickered between them, anxiety etched in his face. "Lucy, I need something concrete," he said quietly. Lucy handed him a folder of documents compiled by Garrett. "Read," she urged. Look at the shell company registrations, the timeline of Evelyn's last lawsuit, and the terms of your contract with her father. If Charles triggers the penalty clause, you forfeit control of your assets." Carter flipped through the pages, face draining of color. He recognized the signatures, the hidden disclaimers. He saw how the puzzle pieces fit together. With shaking hands, he glared at Evelyn. "Tell me this isn't true," he murmured. Evelyn set her champagne flute down. "It's business, Carter," she retorted with a lift of her chin. "Nothing personal." She rose, grabbing her handbag. "You can keep the worthless remains of your empire for all I care. My father has bigger fish to fry." She strode to the door, pausing in front of Lucy. Lowering her voice so only Lucy could hear, she whispered, "I would have left him eventually. He's not half as interesting as he thinks. But thank you for showing me just how gullible he was." It was fun while it lasted. Then, with a self-satisfied smirk, she slipped out into the corridor. Carter collapsed into a chair, head in his hands, the folder resting on his lap. In that moment, Lucy almost felt pity for him. Almost. She was breathing heavily, a sheen of sweat forming on her brow. Her baby kicked a sharp reminder of the life she was protecting. Amanda rushed to Lucy's side, guiding her to sit. Carter looked up, eyes red. "Lucy, I'm sorry." His voice cracked, filled with regret. "I was such a fool. I betrayed you, and for what? A sham that nearly destroyed everything." Tears glistened at the corners of his eyes. Lucy inhaled, steadying herself. "Yes, you were a fool," she replied quietly. "But I can't carry your guilt anymore. I have our baby to think about." He reached for her hand, and for a moment Lucy let him hold it. "I want to fix this," he said. "If not for us, then for our child. I'll cancel the separation petition. I'll fight to keep the business afloat somehow. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking. Give me a chance to be a father." Lucy's mind spun. Could she forgive him? Maybe not now. Maybe not completely. But in her heart, she wanted her child to have a father. "Actions," she said. Softly. "I need to see actions. Carter, not words." He nodded, tears slipping down his face. "I understand." A month later, Lucy, now nearly 9 months pregnant, decided to move forward with her life. She and Carter remained separated, but she allowed him to attend prenatal checkups. In the meantime, Carter scrambled to reorganize his finances quietly, securing new investors to buy out Charles Pierce's stake. It was a stressful period, but ironically Carter felt more alive than he had in months. He was motivated not just by financial gain, but by a need to protect Lucy and their unborn child from the chaos he'd created. The day Lucy went into labor was a stormy afternoon. Rain pelted the windows of the penthouse as her contractions began. Panicked, she called Carter, who rushed over. He drove her to the hospital himself, ignoring every traffic rule in the process. By the time they arrived, Lucy's labor was in full swing. Hours of pain and effort later, a tiny cry filled the delivery room. They welcomed a baby girl, Grace Donovan. In that moment, tears of joy mingled with tears of regret on Carter's face. He watched Lucy cradle their daughter with a protective, tender awe. He tentatively reached out, and Lucy allowed him to hold Grace. The weight of responsibility and love crashed over him like an unexpected wave. Dr. Patterson visited to offer her congratulations, surprising Lucy with flowers. Amanda brought a little pink onesie embroidered with the words, "Mommy's Miracle." Margaret wept openly, kissing her granddaughter's forehead. Carter stayed by Lucy's side, quietly overwhelmed. The days after Grace's birth passed in a blur of sleepless nights, soft lullabies and moments so tender they nearly made Lucy forget everything that had come before. Carter showed up every day, hands full, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with flowers, but always with effort. He changed diapers, warmed bottles, and paced the hallway for hours when Grace refused to sleep. It wasn't redemption. Not yet. But it was something real. Despite her exhaustion, Lucy couldn't ignore how different Carter had become. The arrogant businessman who once prioritized champagne deals and social status now sat barefoot on her nursery floor, humming lullabies to a newborn wrapped in a lavender blanket. He'd sold several assets to stabilize his finances. Cutting ties with Charles Pierce had left a crater in his business, but he refused to let it collapse. With smaller, honest investors, Carter rebuilt brick by brick, quieter, now humbler. And yet, the wound still ached. Every time Lucy closed her eyes, the memory returned. Evelyn's smug face. The searing sound of champagne exploding down a hospital corridor. The cruel glint in Carter's eyes when he said nothing, when he let Evelyn humiliate her and their unborn child. Some scars didn't bleed anymore, but they itched in the silence. One evening, as twilight draped the city in a soft blue haze, Lucy stood in the nursery, swaying gently with Grace in her arms. The baby had just drifted off. Her tiny fingers curled around Lucy's necklace. A knock at the door broke the stillness. Carter stood there, hesitant, but steady. "Can I talk to you?" he asked softly, nodding toward the hallway. Lucy nodded and followed him into the living room. The air between them felt heavy, but not hostile, just thick with the things they hadn't yet said. Carter cleared his throat. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. About you. About Grace, about what I ruined." Lucy didn't respond. She waited. "I want us to try counseling again," he continued. "Not because I expect things to go back to the way they were. I know I broke something important, but I want to earn your trust back. For Grace. For whatever future might still exist between us, even if it's just peace." Lucy's eyes softened, but her voice stayed measured. "You shattered my heart, Carter. That doesn't get glued back overnight. I know," he said, "and I'm not asking for shortcuts." She looked down, then up again, her voice trembling. "Right now, I don't know if I can ever love you the same way. But I do know this. Grace deserves a father who shows up, who fights, who tells her the truth and keeps his promises." He nodded, his eyes brimming. "Then let me be that man. I won't let either of you down again." Lucy took a breath, the weight of motherhood and memory pressing down on her chest. Then slowly she said, "Let's focus on being good parents first. Everything else, we'll take one day at a time." Time softened the wounds, but didn't erase them. In the months following Grace's birth, Lucy found herself adjusting to a new rhythm, one that didn't revolve around Carter's presence or absence, but around her daughter's tiny breaths, her coos, and the steady rise and fall of life lived in quiet determination. She and Carter had settled into a co-parenting arrangement. It was fragile at first, like walking across cracked glass, but it slowly found footing. They maintained separate homes, separate routines, but shared weekends and special milestones. It wasn't the life they had envisioned when they exchanged vows beneath an arch of roses. But it was something. It was stability for Grace, if nothing else. Lucy's heart was still guarded. She'd forgiven pieces, but not the whole. The betrayal still lived in the corners of her memory. Evelyn's smug face, the hiss of that champagne bottle in the hospital hallway, those weren't easily forgotten. Yet Carter was trying. He showed up. He held Grace without being asked. He laughed more, worked humbler hours, and kept his promises. And that in itself was a beginning. Evelyn had disappeared, taking her designer luggage and venomous pride elsewhere. Rumor placed her in Europe chasing another investor, or perhaps her next project. Charles Pierce, her father, was under investigation for financial fraud, and his investments had been pulled from Carter's firm entirely. What once seemed like Carter's downfall had cleared the path for a quieter, more honest rebuilding. Lucy returned to work slowly, taking on select design projects that allowed her to stay close to Grace. Her creativity had shifted now, less about impressing clients and more about creating spaces that felt like refuge. She even agreed to redesign the maternity wing at St. Matthew's Hospital. The irony wasn't lost on her, but there was something poetic about returning to the place where everything shattered this time to make it better for someone else. One cool spring evening, Lucy made an unannounced visit to Carter's new office. It wasn't the penthouse suite with skyline views and walls of mahogany. This space was smaller, cozier, tucked inside a shared creative complex downtown. No receptionists in tailored suits, just Carter sleeves rolled up, surrounded by blueprints and modest furniture. He blinked in surprise when he saw her. Lucy. She smiled faintly. Thought I'd drop by. Amanda's with Grace. I figured we could talk. Maybe grab coffee. He nodded, speechless for a moment. Yeah, I'd like that. They strolled to the little cafe where they used to meet in the early days, the one where he once asked her opinion on throw pillows and somehow ended up asking for her heart. Over lattes and laughter, they shared stories about Grace's newest quirks and swapped photos on their phones like old friends rediscovering something forgotten. As Lucy walked home that night, a breeze brushing through her hair, she felt something unexpected stir in her chest. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was the possibility of something new. The passage of time didn't erase the sting, but it helped Lucy reshape the pain into something purposeful. Months had passed since that unforgettable day in the hospital, and yet every time she replayed it in her mind, the image remained razor-sharp. Evelyn's stilettos clacking down the corridor, the pop of the champagne bottle slicing through the sterile silence, and the smug, venom-laced grin that turned Lucy's stomach more than the contractions ever had. It was a scene that didn't belong in a place of healing, and yet that moment had become the catalyst that changed Lucy's life. Now sitting at her desk with the soft hum of Grace's baby monitor in the background, Lucy opened the leather-bound journal Amanda had given her, a sanctuary for her thoughts, fears, victories, and heartbreaks. She had filled dozens of pages since Grace's birth, but today she chose to revisit the moment she had once sworn she'd never write about. I was lying in a hospital bed, terrified for my baby, unsure of whether I was losing my marriage or my mind. And then Evelyn arrived, dressed like she was attending a gala, champagne in hand, gloating in front of nurses and patients alike. She told me Carter had chosen her. She laughed. She celebrated. But what she didn't realize is that in that moment, she gave me clarity. Lucy paused, pen hovering above the page, emotions stirring as vividly as if they'd happened yesterday. That same day, she had received a small envelope from St. Matthew's Hospital, one last invoice reminder, but tucked within was a handwritten note from Nurse James Pritchard. "I don't usually write personal notes," it read, "but I had to let you know I remember that day. The strength you showed when most would have screamed or broken down. It stayed with me. Congratulations on your baby. She's lucky to have a mother like you." Lucy's fingers traced the ink like it was a lifeline. That single message felt more healing than all the apologies Carter had managed in the weeks that followed. It reminded her of the witnesses to her suffering, but also to her courage. She thought about the people who had held her up during that time. Amanda, who never once faltered. Her mother Margaret, whose love was steel in velvet. Dr. Patterson's steady wisdom. Garrett Whitman's quiet pursuit of truth. And even Carter, flawed, broken but trying. She looked toward the crib where Grace slept peacefully, one chubby hand resting on her blanket. This baby had been born in the storm, but would grow up in calm because Lucy had willed it so. Closing her journal, Lucy whispered to herself, "That was the day everything fell apart, and the day I found the strength to rebuild." She no longer saw herself as a victim of betrayal, but as a woman who stood tall in the ashes and chose to rise. Over the next year, Lucy and Carter navigated a careful path of co-parenting, gradually building trust. While they remained living separately, they found a rhythm. Weekends were spent together, cooking meals in Lucy's penthouse, taking Grace to the park, attending Mommy and Me classes. It wasn't the picture-perfect marriage they once envisioned, but it was a functional partnership grounded in mutual respect and a shared love for their daughter. Financially, Carter stabilized his business under new partnerships. His fortune was no longer in the stratosphere, but he was content with a more modest empire and fewer sharks circling around him. He often reflected on how his greed had nearly cost him everything that truly mattered. Lucy resumed her work as an interior designer, taking on select clients to manage her schedule around Grace. She thrived creatively, turning her experiences into inspiration. One project she took on was a special wing in St. Matthew's Hospital, redesigning its waiting rooms and maternity suites to be more comforting and nurturing. Every day she walked those halls was a reminder of the ordeal she'd survived. Despite many lingering emotions, Lucy felt she had reclaimed her life. She was no longer simply the millionaire's wife, but a strong mother and a talented professional in her own right. And perhaps that was the greatest triumph of all. Time would tell if Lucy and Carter could ever truly rekindle their romantic bond. But for now, they focused on loving their child and healing the wounds of the past. Sometimes in the quiet hours after Grace was asleep, Carter would sit across from Lucy and share small, meaningful conversations. They laughed more than they had in a long time, discovering parts of each other they'd overlooked in the chaos. In those moments, Lucy allowed herself a cautious hope. Maybe some mistakes, once properly faced, could pave the way for a better tomorrow. In the end, Lucy's journey was a testament to resilience, courage, and the power of uncovering the truth even when it hurts the most. What began as a fairy tale marriage collapsed under the weight of betrayal, deceit, and a mistress bold enough to pop champagne in a hospital corridor. Yet from the wreckage rose a stronger Lucy, one who learned to fight for herself and her child, and a humbled Carter, forced to confront the dark side of ambition. As Lucy continues rebuilding her life, remember that real strength emerges when we face life's hardest trials. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster of heartbreak and redemption. If you found this story compelling, please like this video. Share it with those who appreciate a dramatic twist, and subscribe for more riveting tales of real-life drama and inspiration. Let's celebrate the power of reinvention and never forget that even in our darkest moments, a new dawn awaits.